Hello, everybody. Mark David Smith here with the Messianic Network. See, right behind me. See, it says the Messianic Network. How much do you know about gerrymandering? Really? Well, neither do I. But we're going to find out together today here on the Compass of kraM. We are going to talk about the Constitution of these here United States here, right? The ones that we're sitting in. Now, we've got several people from other countries that do listen in, watch in. And you're welcome to join us too. And we'd love to be able to actually hear from you on what constitutional differences that you may have in another country. So if you would actually like to join in with our discussion, I have posted a link up on, I'm going to put it in again, and then we're going to put it up on the screen for those that aren't here with me, that aren't real sure of this. And I get my notes. I think I've done a lot of research on the Constitution and found that a place called Annenberg Classroom, that's Annenberg classroom.org, is an absolutely amazing explanation on each individual article, amendment, everything that has to do with the Constitution. Absolutely amazing text that they have, and explanations, and even give a little bit of history on each one of the articles and amendments, which I am going to cover here. I am going to use their text there, which I've made into an outline that I'll be using, but you can follow along almost word for word if you want to follow along with the link that I've given in the text and also up on the screen here. So, and I'm going to leave that up for just a little while. James and Abigail O'Hare are going to join me here right after the intro. And I'm excited about having both of them on, because these guys are like scholars when it comes to the Constitution. I mean, scholars. These guys just literally know every word and what every word means in the Constitution. So y'all know I'm joking. I'm just doing that because I'm looking at their picture down here underneath my screen and look at them laugh and have fun with that, because none of us do. None of us do. That's all there is to it. None of us do. So thanks for joining us today, and we're going to be right back after this. We've only got 4 million different intros here, so we're going to be right back after this.
I like to teach the world to sing. Sing with me.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside.
Oh, sorry. All of our theme songs make bobbleheads out of us, So James and Abigail O'Hare, look at this behind them, We the People. Look at that. I'm telling you, these guys are ready in every season. It makes me in and out, up and down. It makes no difference. Look at them. You guys are just something else. Great background, man.
I did forget my corn cob pipe, you know. Then
Well,
yeah.
you could have wore like a revolutionary hat or something, you know, that kind of stuff. But how's James and Abigail doing? Just trucking along here, aren't we?
Yeah, doing well. Everything's going as best as could be expected. We're excited. You know, we're doing a lot of things around the house and with each other, and so that's a good thing. Spending a lot of quality time together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We have some interesting weather here. We've had snow, we've had blustery winds, and every time it's like we're going to go out and do the yard work, and we wake up to a winter wonderland. And then yesterday we said, well, let's go rake some leaves. And we were caught up in a tornado, not a tornado, but it was strong.
It was strong winds, 45 miles an hour.
Bags down the street and leaves too. But we got our exercise, but we're doing great. And guess what? You know where we're from? We're from Massachusetts, where it all began. So you're talking about.
Oh my gosh. And everybody in Massachusetts knows the Constitution inside and out, right?
Yeah, yes, especially the Democrats. But that's another thing.
Okay. Is that because they're constantly trying to change it, and the Republicans are saying no, leave it alone?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They think evolutionary. The Constitution is evolutionary in their opinions.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, everything else seems to be, why not our stapleism? You know, why not the things that ground us and keep us founded? Why not just change those things up and let everything be scattered? That's kind of the way I'm seeing it. No, we don't want to do that. I like my stability. And I like my stability of the Constitution. And what's that?
It's a brilliant document.
It is. It's actually quite amazing how it was structured. And the last time I spent a show talking about the Constitution, I actually went back and did a point-by-point outline of how it was all put together and the history of it and who was who and what they did. And that is on the website. You can find it under the video series, The Constitution. And it is, I think I covered it pretty good. I had a lot of really good responses back from people that, you know, actually knew somewhat about their history and found things they didn't know. So that always makes me feel good, as I'm sure you guys are the same. I mean, we all teach Torah, but it's wonderful when we get feedback from people that also teach Torah and say, wow, I never heard that before. I'm not familiar with that. So it's quite amazing, these things. I mean, looking also in my thought process of comparing, we have our own constitution in Torah, in the laws of God. And though it does, even God says to pay attention to our own government and not to put it down, and to abide by our own rules, the laws of the land. And but we also have our own laws of the land, the laws of God's land. And I consider myself owned by God, and I want to follow along with his rules, regulations. And my little catchword, which I've been teaching on quite often, which enters into a lot of the things that we talk about, is halakha, the way a person walks. And Torah being our laws of God, our instructions, our teaching, our understanding of the way that God wants us to walk. And so it's our halakha. It's our, and I did use that quite often in talking about the Constitution when I gave the history of it. Is that this is the way we should be walking when living in the United States and abiding by these rules. But at the same time, not only do we, the people, the citizens, just says right there behind your head, we the people. It applies to us. It also applies to those that are making the laws and enforcing the laws. It's amazing how many stories we hear about people who are in authority that are enforcing the laws of the land in the United States that are violating those laws themselves, and not they want to enforce something that they don't enforce in their own lives. And once again, I think and I like to correlate this with my teaching of the Constitution, is it goes right along with our laws of God. We have so many people out there that want to be Torah terrorists or law, you're not doing the law right, or you're not doing it at all, or you're not doing this part of the law and all of this, when in fact, if we look at our own lives, we'll find out not one of us can possibly do the law according to the way God wants it set up. All we can do is try our very best, repent, walk with God, do the best we can, and treat each other according to that law of God. And so by talking about the Constitution, I find a lot of times when I'm looking at what they've done and how they set it up in a very structured manner, not only does it set a foundation, but it also allows for some leeway in as time goes and as people are developing into who we are and what happens in this world. Also, the laws of God, they don't compromise, and we can't compromise those, but we find how to use those, even though life itself is constantly progressing and changing. And I think it's very interesting. It's God's hand is definitely in all of this, for sure. Even though we do know that some of the leaders of our land way back then were not exactly serving the one and only true God. My wife and I are watching a documentary, sorry, trying to get the word out, documentary on the secret. There's some secrets behind a lot of things in our history documents, and how some of the original people putting together the Constitution were Masons, and they had their own laws within that didn't really go along with God. But very interested in hearing your thoughts and opinions on the Constitution, the history of it. Anything you want to add to add, subtract, or expand upon of what I just said? Either one of you. Oh, hello.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's for it.
Well, I just want to give you one little factoid, which I thought was always interesting, is in the beginning, when after the Constitution was written, and then there was a big hullabaloo about the rights of the people and all that, and so that's when they came up with the Bill of Rights. There were actually 12 original proposals, amendments to the Constitution, for that, and 10 of them were accepted. That's where we have the Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. But the other two were still floating around. And in 1992, the 27th Amendment of the Constitution was passed, and it was just passed by the Senate and the House, and I think they had to have a 2/3 majority in both houses, I believe, in order for it to happen. And that was for the compensation of wages for the senators and the congressmen and women in the session. Up until that point, they could vote for giving themselves a raise, and then next paycheck they got the raise, if you will.
Yeah.
And nobody could say anything about it. So if they did it early enough in their thing, or middle, by the time they come to elections, people forget about it, whatever. So the 27th Amendment negates that and says you can, when you do that, if you do that, and if you vote yourself a compensation increase, it's the next Congress that gets the increase, not the one that's current. So you have to wait until the next one, then it'll go up. So it gives the people time to say, hey, what are you doing? I mean, here we are in a recession. Here we are in a depression. Here we are, whatever the case may be. And you're raising your salaries while the rest of us are losing money year by year. So I thought that was always an interesting thing. And they didn't have to go through the whole state thing because it was already it was already in there, but it was never ratified. And all they had to do is just 2/3. And that was 1992. That was when George H. Walker Bush was in at that point.
Interesting.
Yeah, I always thought that was an interesting thing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Mark, I'm so thankful that you're bringing this subject up because in the day that we're living in this generation, and as I observe what's going on in the world, and I'm a good listener. I'm listening to what people are saying regarding, I'm talking now our government, the governments, not just our government, but all the various governments that are in the world. And what's very refreshing to me is the fact that in the Constitution, just like almost like in the book of Esther, if you will, God is in the Constitution of the United States of America. He doesn't come right out and say it is written, but those who wrote the Constitution, many of them were very strong believers and trusting and had a heart to serve and really saw the United States of America as being a refuge for us, preparing for the next generation. So what encourages me in the Constitution and keeps my sanity when I start seeing the government trying to make decisions and everything, I say hallelujah for the Constitution. Because even though some knuckleheads will try to go above and beyond the Constitution, which they do, and I'm always saying it to James or to the people I'm around, why don't they stop this knucklehead from saying this or doing this? And they'll say they can't. They're within the rights of what's going on, what's written in the Constitution.
That's right.
And there's something in the Constitution that stops something from happening that could be devastating, worse than what it is, if you can imagine that. Yeah. So I always say that the mercy of the Father is written in and through the Constitution. There's something there that lets the people know, I'm with you. You know, thus far and no more, some of these people can go in trying to destroy America. And plus, it gives that light to those people who say, I know something needs to be done in this country. I'm not quite sure what it is. And they'll look at the Constitution and they'll find some nugget in there and it'll stir their heart and it'll bring light to them. And they say, I need to run for office because on that one nugget that I'm reading in the Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's in the Declaration, but it's part of, it's part of the, if you will, the foundation of the United States of America. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, we could do a major teaching on life.
Very true.
And the pursuit of happiness.
Very true.
Torah teaches. And so I look at that and I say, but thank you that you put that there as a means of, if somebody says something's stirring in my heart and I want to serve this nation, but I don't know where to go and what to do. Those 3 words, those 3 statements could fan the flame of Yah in their hearts, and they could make a difference. Like even what John Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for
Mhm.
you, but
Mhm.
what you can do for your country.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now that statement
Very
speaks
true.
volumes, so I'm so thankful you're doing this, Mark, because, if we get caught up in what's going on in the media and everything that's going on, and we see all these things that are happening, if we don't have the constitution of the word of God, and if we don't see these nuggets in the Constitution that can say there's hope, if somebody just grabs a hold of this, if somebody that has some influence just grabs a hold of this, I believe the Father will say one word from me, and it could be in the Constitution, one word: life. Don't kill babies.
Mhm.
Abortion type. So I just see that the word of God is written in and through the Constitution in a way that, again, if the right vessel gets a hold of it,
Mhm.
they can make a difference. But on the other side, those who don't want to get a hold of it, who are just seeking darkness, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like it. They're going
I
to come
agree.
against that person that is trying to bring light into a situation.
Right. Well, I'll tell you just briefly the reason that I am doing this at all is because I find myself hearing other people quote the Constitution, mention the Constitution, argue it, or try to do something, and then somebody else will say, "No, that's against the Constitution," and I'm going, "Yeah, yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah." What? I, I really don't know. I'm hearing you, but I really don't know myself. And I'll ask somebody else, and they don't know either. So, what better way to do it than just to get into it? Let's go study it and let's go find out for ourselves. And even at 65 years old, I need to know this stuff. I need to get it in me and know what I'm talking about. And I haven't even gone, I've scanned through. I have a little booklet here in the first couple of teachings that I did here. I used a lot of the quotes out of this book. The first few pages are actually quotes from people like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and many, many other people about what they said about the Constitution, not the Constitution, but the whole Constitution is in this book too, and the amendments, everything is in that book, and it afforded me the ability to at least go in and see what I wanted to see. But if I hear something and somebody says this out of the Constitution, hey, look, I can go in now and I can really see what it is that's there. Or of course you can look it up online. Of course you can. The link that I have down here at the bottom, Annenberg Classroom, that's annenbergclassroom.org, and they list out the entire Constitution, but they take each one of the different texts, the articles, the amendments, everything, and they give an explanation of it and a little bit of history of things that may have changed within that part of the text. And this has been a lifeblood to me. It's been really, really, really good. And so that's why I'm doing this, is because I don't know it myself. And what better way than, hey, let's all take a look at it and let's all give our opinion on it and what we have. So I'm so glad you guys are joining me. And what I'd like to do now is just go ahead and start. I have, like I say, the first couple of teachings I did was really more on the statements made by people like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, but I also had John Craig, who is very, very, very versed in laws and news and all kinds of things. So we had a good discussion that's on there. And then I did the history. So I've never really got into the text yet. And so today I'm starting with the text. And what I'd like to do is you guys keep your mic on, and as I'm going through and reading part of this, and I'm going to read what the Annenberg classroom says is the meaning of that. I'm going to read. If you guys anything you want to add to it, you interrupt me and just say, "Hey, I've got something I want to talk about on that." And so you're more than welcome just to enter in. And of course, everybody in the text here, you're more than able to put something in there, and we'll put it up on the screen and talk to you about it. So starting right off, of course, right there behind James and Abigail here is "We the People." And James, if you'll just move your head, I can read. No, I've got it over here. I don't. No.
You see how in unison we did that? Watch once again.
There we go. That's right. No, that's okay. I've got it. I've got it over here. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And I'm going to stop right there and say, first of all, there is one word in there that just pops out as it's a trigger word. What I call a trigger word in religion. There are let's see, in our religion, there are words that are used by we the people that are serving God, that words that are used that other people that don't serve God don't use. And one of those words is blessings. How many times have you heard a person that does not serve God use the word blessing or blessings? You just don't. Because we understand, we as people the people that serve God, we know what God means by that word, and we know what the Bible means by that word, and we use that word in the right context. So to say and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity is a big standout phrase to me. So
yes,
amen. It's it's interesting because blessings of liberty. It just reminds you of the scripture where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, and that is a blessing.
Well done. Well said.
And so I see that in that, and I just kind of go back and wonder if that's what they were thinking, because they knew the scriptures, though they may have been, they were believers of some sort, obviously, and a lot of them were. Others were maybe other things, but they knew the scriptures. Even that they knew, because that was their lifestyle. That's what they heard all the time from everybody. As opposed to today, which you go around and you say, do you know the first 4 books of the New Testament? Nobody knows, or whatever, and they don't even know the Father. They don't know the Son, and that's and those liberties that we have today come from Him, in Him alone. So that's what I see there.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, just even the very first sentence, we the people of the United States. That's singling out the United States in order to form a more perfect union. And this to me is another very powerful statement, because it's not dictatorship. It's not everybody, having to live under like a socialism or something. It's a perfect union, and it's forming. So it means it's a work in progress in order to form a more perfect union and establish justice. So it's always this act of everybody having to come to an understanding of what is a perfect union, and how do we form a perfect union. So there has to be, if you will, some type of instruction. There has to be some type of instruction. So right away, to me, that stirs something in a person's heart when they read that. Well, how do we form a more perfect union? Well, I'm so glad you asked.
What I did is I married Abigail. It was a perfect.
I agree. Order. It's like a Seder in Passover. That's what the Seder means, is the order. So
and if the thing is with this, to me, it seems if you take it in bite-sized pieces like you're doing, Mark, which is awesome, it stirs the mind, the will, and the emotion, saying there has to be a system. There has to. We're dealing with people. This was like,
right.
It was like it was definitely given from the Father, saying this is not just going to be this little group of people that you're seeing right now. This is going to be an open gateway where there's going to be many people wanting to come over. So this is an establishment for everybody to say, wait a minute, perfect union, establish justice,
Yeah, exactly.
tranquility. It goes right along. And it's like, everybody, are you gonna do you want to join our team? Are you willing to join, the unity here? I mean, are you in agreement with this, or do you have your own agenda? Do you have your own agenda? It's not going to work.
Right.
Not to say that you can't maybe weave it in, but there's a certain foundation that we have to go by.
Amen.
Well, I'm looking at it and thinking of what we have today. And actually, another thing, like what James was talking about a while ago, it sparked my mind. The original reason that they were even here was, yes, they knew the scriptures. The idea is that they knew them well enough to know they didn't need a government of religion to tell us what to do. That's what they were doing. They were separating themselves from a religious government, a government that in Britain that was ruled by religion. And they didn't want that. We know religion. It's not like we don't want religion. We just don't want our government to say that what religion and how we're to do it. And so, you're right. They did know the scriptures. They just didn't want that. And that's the reason for separating it. And so they were in turmoil then. So what better words to use? To secure domestic tranquility. They were in untranquility, if you want to say it. But established justice stands out to me. I am working on doing a show called Justice Injustice. And my wife has told me practically, I think since before we were married, that my middle name should be Justice, because I have, it is probably the number one thing to get my blood to boil, is to find a story or find out or even have done to me an injustice. I cannot handle it. It's one thing. And so I've been thinking about doing a show called Justice Injustice. And anyway, that's real heavy. When I see that word justice, it's interesting to me that union, justice, tranquility, welfare, liberty, posterity are all capitalized words. They wanted those words to be out there. They wanted people to understand this is the most important thing that we're looking at here. Even to provide for the common defense. I'm wondering if that defense shouldn't have been, maybe it just goes right into the promote the general welfare being capitalized there. So all these different things have to do with what these 13 colonies were dealing with at the time, and were knowledgeable enough to know that when we form these new people, and this was actually done during the Revolutionary War, by the way.
Mm.
All of this was put together during the time Britain was saying, no, we own the world. I mean, that's the history. Britain was going throughout country by country by country and, making wars and trying to rule the planet. And this is one of the things where they're saying, no, we left you because of that, and we are going to stand up for ourselves. And of course they did. But I think they did because they were structured enough to put together their own constitution, which is, by the way, this constitution is one of the very first country constitutions that was ever established on this planet. Many other countries have come behind us and established their own constitution, but this is one of the first. And I believe that it's the reason why they were able to stand on their own against Britain.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll tell you, it also talks about, to me, relationships. Because the whole thing, every one of those words is dealing with relationships. And I believe that because they did escape the worshiping of a man king and wanted to come to this land to worship the King of Kings, that was the ultimate goal of the people who came over here, was to worship the King of Kings, not worship man. And so that lends to being a servant. See, when I read the Constitution, I think the people that are going to embrace being a part of the government, if you will, need to understand you are a servant. You're not a leader. We have a leader. It's the creator of heaven and earth. You're a servant to the people. And so James said, that there's a relationship between a man and a woman. There's a relationship between a man and a woman and their children. There's a relationship with your neighbors. There's relationships with, every time you meet somebody, Mark, we have a relationship. James, you and I, and all the people that we know that we've met, there's a relationship that develops. And you have to go through sometimes trial and tribulation in relationships. Why? Because we're different. Why? Because we come from different daddies and mummies, and we were brought up differently. Right. So I believe these forefathers had the wisdom of the Father that knew they needed those particular words, we the people, but it's called United States in order. So there's an order, but the whole aspect of it is we need to get along together. We don't need to be cloned, and we don't need to be puppets, but we need to respect the humanity, if you will, if I can put that word in there.
That's right. Good word.
Yeah.
It's we the people, not we the government of the United States.
Right.
Which is very well done.
Yeah. Not we Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
No names.
Come on. Get real here. I mean, but it's on both sides. I mean, they're both constitutional offenders in a lot of cases. But you're right. But we the people, not we. We're not serving a king. And it's interesting because that's what they've been talking about with President Trump. Because President Trump, he likes to talk, and he talks off the cuff a lot of times, and just talks what's on his heart. And he mentions things that really gets the media and especially the Democrats very, very fired up, and they kept calling him that he thinks he's a king, he's this and that and the other thing. And this was just when this whole pandemic was beginning, and then I look at the 50 states and the 50 governors, and I look at some of the other governors that like in Michigan, in Virginia, in New Jersey, in New York, and other places where they're clamping down, using their power to keep people in, so much as taking the blessings of liberty away from them by if a husband and a wife with their daughter playing catch, baseball, a little catch in a open field park, nobody around, and they get arrested. They take the husband away in cuffs. I mean, really? So what they keep on saying about President Trump, they're actually doing. And so we need to be careful. And it's good that you're bringing this out now, because we need to make sure that our First Amendment rights, our Second Amendment rights, the freedom of worship and the freedom of the right to bear arms is not infringed on our lives, because that's what they're doing in Virginia. That total nutcase governor who is shutting down everything, but abortions are essential surgery. So he signs that all into law, and other states are doing that same thing. Massachusetts did that also, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You're all nuts and possessed. What's going
following
on?
The Constitution.
They're not, and we're only in the preamble. I mean, this is so important, because a lot of times that you hear politicians, mostly on the left side, talking about we live in a democracy. Well, we don't live in a democracy. This is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. We have 50 democracies, if you will. 50 states that have democracies. But when we have the presidential election and the Congress and the Senate, that is a constitutional republic. We vote. The senators and the other ones, they're kind of in a sense democracy, but our presidential election we choose them by electoral votes, so that the big states can't beat on the little states. And if we had a pure democracy in this thing, the politician would go to New York, California, Illinois, and another couple of big states, and because Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than President Trump. But President Trump won because of the constitutional republic that we have.
Because we have a just God. Now, James, you're jumping ahead. That's in Article 1, Section 1. That's the next section. So
I know, but it still kind of goes with the preamble.
I get it. No, we're good. Hey,
powerful preamble.
Do you know that I'm surrounded by James and Brian was a history major. James took a course in this college in this particular subject. So this was a conversation always around our table.
Sure. Well, let me bring Mrs. Sherry Flanagan in with us. Good morning, Sherry. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Glad to have you join us. We've been reading your text in the chat room here, and I'm glad you've come to give us your own input on this.
Well, one thing I had wanted to comment on, which we're talking about the statement, we the people, in order to form, and then they tell what they're wanting to form, and the unity and the justice, established justice, does go back to scripture, as Abigail is saying. One thing a lot of people don't realize, the Geneva Bible had a lot of comments in it. And one of the comments in the Geneva Bible is why King James did not like the Geneva Bible, is that it came against the right of kings, which that was a big deal. That's how they challenged, the annotations challenged the divine right of kings, which they'd say, oh, God put me in charge, and so they're like, no. So actually that had a lot to do with why we have the King James Bible today. But the Puritans, and that's the Bible that they read first. So it's just an outworking of that coming against the divine right of kings. I mean, it wasn't just that, but it was had a lot to do with how King James. I mean, they had a very Bible community that they had like their own type of money. And then they turned around and said, no, you can't do that. And they crashed the economy in the colonies. I mean, there's a whole thing on that of how they had like made their own money, because you couldn't take 10 bushels of wheat 3 miles away during that time and 16 hogs somewhere. So they gave it a value, and they had that's what our fiat money is today. It's just the value of something. So that's how they did their regular, they'd say, instead of delivering the hogs, I'll give you this. It stands for this much value.
Sure.
So they came up and said, well, you can't use that to pay your taxes. So they immediately overnight crashed the economy in the colonies.
Wow.
There was just a lot going on there, but one of the big basic things was that they had been taught by their fathers and mothers and grandfathers against the divine right of kings. And if you go back and look at history, I mean, Calvin Knox was famous for not bowing before the kings. He like, I only bend my knee to God. I'm not going to bow before you. So there was a lot going on there with that. And the three most important words in our Constitution are we the people. We the people are supposed to be ruling this government. So if we allow those rascals to get in, who did it? We the people didn't go out and exercise our right to vote.
Very good, very well said.
If you don't like who's in office and you didn't vote, oh well, so sad, too bad. You're part of the, I understand people not wanting to go against their conscience and all that, but if we the Virginia governor is a classic example of what happens when evil men get into power. And evil men will get into power if the people of God sit on the sidelines and do nothing. What is it? Evil men, when good men do nothing, evil men flourish.
Yeah.
It's and we're the only country in the world that can vote. That's why they are so rabid to pull us down and to shred our Constitution. And actually this thing of arresting people because they're outside of their houses, if you look back on it and you look back at all quarantines, the people that were sick were quarantined, not the people that were healthy. So they got that backwards. And they've shown with the model in Sweden that they're not doing all the stuff we've done over here, so we just need to continue to pray for President Trump to have wisdom. But like you said, the man playing ball with his child out in the park, they need to challenge that according to the Constitution. We could challenge a lot of the things that they're doing now, because we're a logical people. And, we'll go along with it for a while, what they're asking us, what the experts are saying, but then they can take a step too far. And then that's when we'll rise up and say, no, So you got people out there saying, no, and they don't like it. They want to be a king. And the problem is they're in the wrong country to be a king.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Let me, at this point, I'm going to read a basic outline of what Annenberg Classroom says under the meaning of the header that we've been talking about. It says to create a just government and to ensure peace and adequate national defense and a healthy, I like that word, a healthy, free nation to be ruled by the people, not a king, as Sherry's been saying, or a dictator, not the president, Supreme Court justices, or members of Congress or state legislators. And of course, we've kind of covered all that, but I liked their words of injecting a healthy free nation. And that's a real key thing. I mean, because the word healthy can mean healthy in your mind, healthy in your understanding, healthy in your wisdom to do the right thing. And I mean, healthy to me even connotates righteousness in a lot of different ways. So, and of course, a free nation being that when this was written, it was just completely accepted that they had slaves. Slaves of all kinds, not just black people. They had there were many people that were slaves, not only in the United States but all over the world. And even though this Constitution was written at a time when all this was widely accepted. I mean, this is the Revolutionary War, not the Civil War. This is a time when it was not even being questioned that, it would be a free nation, according to Annenberg Classroom. Of course, that's not in the opening statements of the Constitution, but very interesting as we see this. So, all right. Well, if there's not anything else to that first part, I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into Article 1, Section 1, and I'll read that as it is written in the Constitution, and then start off with the basic understanding of that, which James has already preambled us to this a little bit. I like using words like preamble when we're talking about these things. Okay, Article 1, Section 1 says in the text, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. I taught on the history of this before and found this part real interesting, even though I somewhat knew this. To be able to see it broke down and defined is very important to me to get it in my head and see it and work it. As they're explaining, the meaning of this is the three branches granting 1, legislative power, 2, executive power, and 3, judicial power. Legislative power is the power to pass laws to Congress. Executive power is the power to administer the laws to the president. And judicial power is the power to interpret and enforce the laws to the courts. So you have the Congress, to the president, and to the courts. And I'm seeing courts as being any kind of courts, anything from the Supreme Court to a local community court, like a township court, could be any of those. And the separation of powers would ensure that no one person or group of persons would be able to create, administer, and enforce the laws, and that each branch would be a check on the power of the other two branches. Congress cannot give its lawmaking powers to the executive or judicial branch. The courts are charged with ensuring that the three branches act independently and do not overreach their delegated powers. So this is, two branches of government are required to work together. All this is just very, very, very interesting to me, how they're doing checks and balances, and which are so how do I want to put it with being politically correct? It's so annihilated today. I mean, in so many different people not wanting to work together. I mean, even right down to this country being in civil war as it is for the past 3 years since 4 years since President Trump even ran for president. Is this country's been in civil war, not working together. The only time they work together is when legally they have to. But in the media, which is to me almost a fourth branch of the government, or at least the media thinks they're a fourth branch of the government, they are working their own powers to be. And I think about this quite often, in that though we have laws set up, sometimes I think the media doesn't believe that the laws apply to them, because they can just do and say whatever they want to say. So anyway, any comments on any of this?
Can I just say the reason why they feel like they can say anything is the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech is it can be a very dangerous means for the enemy to come in and use his words to influence the general populace. And that's, I believe, we're having a battle right now because of the media, if you will, that has that license of freedom of speech. Right. And it's interesting that all these laws, if they are given to people who have a sense of morality and a sense of the Word of God, a sense of the Bible, a sense of, at least there's a thread of some type of Torah, if you will, tree of life in them. These laws, these particular areas of balance, if you will, can be very effectively balanced. But if you have people elected to these various departments and they're worshiping money, and as opposed to the creator of heaven and earth, if money is their main objective, or if they're worshiping the tree of knowledge and of the good and evil, that also taints their reasoning. So you have all these minds that are tainted with deception. And they're sitting there, making these decisions, and my jaws just drop. I'm like, this is dangerous for the United States of America to have a particular individual or individuals making these decisions. They have an agenda, and it always narrows down to destruction of the United States of America, and eliminating the Constitution, and totally annihilating the first part of the Constitution, which is we the people. But here's where there has to be a change, and this is what I believe is happening today, is there are a we the people that are rising up, as Shelley was talking about. Sherry, I'm sorry. Sherry, I have a Shelly in my life, and I do it all the time. And you are the good Sherry, and I'm, but you are the good Sherry. It's there. But anyhow, but the bottom line is this: there comes a time, I believe, how we have cycles in life, and I believe there's cycles taking place right now. There's a cycle that's manifesting supernaturally. And there are people who are waking up. And there are people like what you're doing right now, Mark, is actually reading the Constitution. And there are also people who are actually drawn to reading the Bible again and finding out what is written and what is this Constitution all about. Because guess what? They're not being taught it in schools. And if they are being taught it in the higher universities or even in the public schools, it's in error. They're making our forefathers look like they were a bunch of knuckleheads. Sure. So I just say that I believe there's a paradigm shift that is manifesting in we the people. There's a remnant that's rising to the surface.
Well, I believe that throughout history, there's always been that faction It's just that there are different times in history when the levels of their voice is higher than others. The faction is always there. It just goes in and out. And when it comes down to the media, like what I was saying before, and yes, you're absolutely right. It is the freedom of speech. The difference is, and this is what I asked the very first thing I did when I came on the show this week is, do you know the meaning of the word gerrymandering? Gerrymandering it's actually in the Constitution. And the word means to manipulate the boundaries of an electoral constituency so as to favor one party or class. And I believe that the media believes that they are a different class of people. They have their own laws. They use the freedom of speech, but they almost, in my thought process, is they think that they're a different form of power, like the three branches. They're a branch of their own that comes in to try to manipulate things to be a certain way. I mean, because you even have different media sources that say we're the conservative voice, we are the religious voice, we are this voice. Well, it's good, and it's like what you're saying, Abigail, is there's a faction rising up, but there's always a faction working to try to manipulate one way or the other.
But
and so, yeah.
it's never had such a platform, Mark. The
Yeah,
platform,
I agree.
of the media. Before it was you
agree.
stood at the street corner and you were the herald, and you'd be out there saying something with your own voice, and you'd be reaching a certain group of people.
Yeah.
But now they're reaching millions of people, and unfortunately, can I just say this, and then I'll surrender. I promise. But there's people that are not doing their due diligence. They're not searching the Constitution. They're not reading the scriptures, and so they are just soaking in. If you're on this big media, you must know what you're talking about. And I say, no, because you have your face, and I'm going to put my face out there and say, do your due diligence. I always say that, no matter what I say, don't take my word for it. Search the scriptures, search the history, search the Constitution yourself. Because guess what? It'll be better for you. I can't make the choice that you need to make. But anyhow, so I'll surrender.
Hey, Mark Smith has his own show. He must know what he's talking about.
Well, that's what I always say.
He owns an entire network. Surely he knows what he's talking about. So whatever, that's the way it is. All right.
A choice on who you put on your network.
The Lord leads. The Lord leads.
Amen.
All right.
You were talking about the checks and balances of the government, which is a great system. I mean, where one cannot overrule the other. It has to be done in a way that you can have checks and balances. Just as an aside, we have not seen our checks and our balances are a little lower than we wanted from the government so far, but that's just another story. That's an aside. I mean, that just thought I'd throw.
We haven't either.
But gerrymandering, because just a point of order on that one, or a point of context. Gerrymandering technically is in the Constitution. It's there. It's not called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering was a name given to it by, I don't know if it was by, but it was a governor of Massachusetts, Ettridge Gerry. I think his name was Ettridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elbridge Gerry.
Okay.
And he was the one that, after this, I think it's always done after the census. and then whoever is in control of the state legislature, they're the ones that can put the draw the lines of the congressional districts, because based on population, it depends on how many Congress people you'll have. For the longest time, Massachusetts had 11, and then a couple of decades ago, I think it was, maybe it was last decade, I'm not sure, because people left Massachusetts, that population went down, and we went to 10. So they had to redraw the district. Right. And that's because if you see some of these districts, it's like, why don't you just take these 3 towns that are right next to each other, and that's a district? But no, because there's too many Republicans here, or there's too many Democrats here, depending on who the power is. They want to carve it so that it favors their particular party at the time. So,
yeah, that's 100%, brother. I think what I've done is that I've heard so many people absolutely destroy the English language and use words for their own whatever they want them to mean, that I thought it was just commonplace and I could do it too. So I took that word and just used it for whatever I wanted to make it work for. So, I just, that's a joke, son. I'm sorry. Yes, I understand. And that's very good. Actually, later on in the Constitution, actually in the understanding of it, that is used. And we'll talk about that later on. We're getting down to the end, and I want to go ahead and just finish reading. Yes, Sherry, go ahead.
I just had a couple of quick comments.
Okay.
On freedom of speech. There's an old saying, your freedom of speech ends where my nose begins. Okay. You cannot yell fire when there's not a fire. They ruled on that. They tried to say it was freedom of speech. You cannot do that.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I think the media has been yelling fire when there's not been a fire, and I'm surprised someone has not called them to account, because the Supreme Court has said that. And another thing is, we don't have reporters anymore. Most of them are commentators. Now, what a commentator does is that they listen to, say, the speech by President Trump, and then they try to tell you what he said, like we're stupid idiots and don't speak the English and cannot understand what he says. That irritates me to no end. I'm going like, he did not say that. I heard what he said. But they spin it to make him say something he didn't say. And I ran into this with a lot of people saying, oh, he's this and he's that. And I said, have you ever listened to him? And I had someone say, well, no. I said, well, he's going to be on tonight. Listen to him. And they were at my house and they listened to him. And they looked like so astonished. They said, he didn't say anything that I didn't agree with. I'm going like, duh. The commentators who are no longer reporters think we're stupid and we don't understand what he's saying. He says what he means and means what he says. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. But anyway, that I wanted to start out with that, your freedom of speech ends where my nose begins.
Well, let me just say real quick, that was my point in gerrymandering. The definition is to manipulate the boundaries of and that's my point I was trying to get at. Even though there's more to the definition, I took that part of to make my point, to manipulate the boundaries of. And I believe that's what you're just saying right there. Go ahead, Sherry.
Is that they took over the schools and indoctrinated our children. We used to have to take civics. In order for me to graduate, I had to have American history. I had to know our history, but they have snuck in there. And now you have to look at the books and talk to your children about, well, what did you study today? Well, what did you think of that? And you have to, in some cases, it's not prevalent in Mississippi, but they caught it in Texas. where they had these online books, and these online books that the parents couldn't see. Some of the parents got online and got a hold of them, and they were giving the kids lies. So we really got to watch what our children are learning, because if they can change history, they can get that. That's why we've got the millennials. Not, not all the millennials, but
I
what they.
was wondering why we had millennials. Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
That's it. They're saying that there's going to be a big upsurge with all these people having to stay home of births, and they're going to be called the coronials, but that's another subject.
Sure it is. Go ahead, Abigail.
No, I'm totally in agreement with Sherry, because number one is I was going to say that about the reporters. They're no longer reporters reporting facts. They just have they have somebody that's putting something in their talking points, just talking points. Every single one of them will say the same talking point, which is a lie. They're repeating, and they must have about, let's say they have 20 reporters, and each one of them will have the same talking point concerning President Trump, and they're all lies. And I had somebody at work give me a hairy eyeball because they knew that I was pro President Trump. And so I saw them, looking at me, and I'm like, why is this individual turned on me so much? And I don't go around, I'm not wearing my Trump hat into work. So anyhow, so finally I pulled her aside and I said, what's the matter? I see that there's a distance. I just sense that there's something wrong. And she said, I can't believe that you like President Trump. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, what media do you watch or listen to get your information? And she started telling me the various reporters. And I said, if I printed out something for you, would you read it concerning what he actually said at this particular gathering? And she said, yeah. So I printed out a few pages for her to read. I said, this is actually what he said. This hasn't been tampered with. I said, and I hope it changes your attitude in your mind towards President Trump, because you have to be careful who you're listening to. They're not, unfortunately, I wish I could say reporters were now giving the truth, but they're not. They have an agenda, even to the point that they'll lie and they'll misconstrue words, and they don't, not one, but then somebody is whispering in their ear saying, every single one of you need to say this talking point. Sure. So what's happening to people that don't do their due diligence? Their minds are becoming tainted. Their opinions of people are not being, they don't search out to see the character or integrity of an individual. They just take for granted what's being said on the media. And it's sad. And even in the school system, I used to have to go into school when Brian was in a private school, and they were teaching communism in this particular classroom. This was a private school, a very good school. And I went and talked to the teacher. I said, why are you encouraging these young minds that communism is the way to go? And so we went at it. I said, that's not right. We spend too much money for our children's minds to be tainted by that lie. And we duked it out for a while, and he stopped teaching it.
We actually had a friend of ours that said that there was a Muslim lady that was in the kindergarten teaching the children the Islamic prayers. And boy, you talk about hot when she found that one out. Woo. Right. I don't blame.
We are past the age of Cronkite. Past the age of Cronkite.
No, we're in the age of kraM kite.
Yeah, kraM kite. No, we're the age of not even going there. All right, I'm gonna finish this up real quick. I'm just gonna go ahead and read through the rest of my notes, and then we'll tie it up here. The Senate must approve the president's appointments to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the president has the power to veto acts of Congress or to pardon convicted criminals. The federal government's power is limited to what is written in the Constitution. If the Constitution does not specifically give a power to the federal government, the power is left to the states. Now, this is a real interesting fact because, as you know, I watch a lot of movies and other types of things, but it's also in the news that there are a lot of times when the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, will come onto a local scene where there's been a local crime that's happened and try to take control. But if that local government will stand up and say, no, this is my jurisdiction, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has to back off. And it's because of that right there that if the Constitution does not specifically give power to the federal government, that includes that particular crime scene, the power is left to the states or the local governments. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you could say something. Article 1, Section 1 also requires that Congress be bicameral. Now, this is something that I had talked about. It's basically said to House. It's interesting. When I talked about this before, a lot of people didn't realize that, hey, we're all two House. We're bicameral. So, if you go to somebody and say, hey, are you bicameral? Anyway, what it is. Bicameral means it should be divided into two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. At the time the Constitution was adopted, several states and the Continental Congress had only one lawmaking body. Now, this is what James got into a while ago. The creation of the two legislative bodies reflected a compromise between the power of the states and the power of the people. The number of the seats in the House of Representatives is based on population. The larger and more urban states have more representatives than the more rural, less populated states. But the Senate gives power to the states equally, with 2 senators from each state. To become law, any proposed legislation must be passed by both the House and the Senate and be approved by the president, even though he can veto it, meaning that he can wipe it out. So it can go all the way through. That is what the HR 5 is going through right now. They've gone through the House of Representatives and it's in the Senate. And if it passes the Senate, the United States or the president can still veto all of that. So the Equality Act bill is what I'm talking about. Anyway, it's great that all this was set up, pre-set up like this, and that we still stand by this because there's nothing wrong with what has just been lined out right there. It's the checks and balances. Go ahead.
Just that if there's one more step, if the president vetoes it, then it goes back to the House and Senate, and they can override his veto if they vote together. That's why it's really important who gets in where on the House and the Senate, because they can actually override a president's veto.
Correct, with a 2/3 majority on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's not a simple 50 plus 1
majority. Just like they had to have a 2/3. There's certain things they have to have a 2/3 majority on.
The thing is that if you pass or if it's, I was going to say, I'm trying to look at it in the negative, but it doesn't work that way. I was thinking of another scenario. So anyway, all right. Any other comments anybody wants to give on this, and we'll wrap it up. The last words. And
I just want to say one thing, that I have never ever in my lifetime seen such a a split, a double-minded, a bipolar situation that's taking place. I have never seen it. And I mean, I've been around a few years, and I've always been interested in the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and all of it. I just loved it. James and I mean, we're in Massachusetts, and we've done some serious studying, and so many people that I know have majored in history. And so I used to say, what are you majoring in history for? You're going to become a teacher, or what are you going to do? But they were interested in knowing the history and how it runs. And now that I think about it, it's such a valuable piece of information, if you will, especially if you really divide and conquer what's going on, and you see we the people. That's us. And I love when Sherry brought that forth, and I'm glad that we have it on the back of us. But the bottom line is we have to be very much engaged in what's going on in this country. We have to be aware of it. And thank you, Mark, for doing this, because it's something that we, the people, need to be cognizant of, so we, the people, can do our part in all this and vote, and then be a voice.
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very important, is that we need to do our constitutional duty and go out and vote. Too many people stay at home when we only have 50% of the population that's eligible to vote voting. That's just sad. But one quick last example, and this kind of goes with the three branches in the media it's Sherry mentioned, the commentators, not reporters, not
the four branches. You mean the four branches? You're
talking about
the three branches plus one, maybe. I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
But so because she mentioned that the commenters and not reporters. I mean, this is the quickest example. The most fresh one that I can think of right now is President Trump is going to be. This is a Trump derangement syndrome personified. You have he mentioning yesterday that he was going to create an executive order to stop legal immigration for a period of 60 days. Now, when people heard that, they didn't go stop and say, well, what does that mean? What is in the context of what he's saying? They only heard that portion and they went nuts and said that he's stopping everything. Well, that's not true. Because if you heard him last night, what he's saying is we're stopping people who want to come in as a green card holder, which is like a permanent resident, if you will. They're going to stop that for 60 days, but people coming in for short-term work or things like that, they're not stopping. But yet all the Democrats that I saw, Beto O'Rourke even, I mean, he put out a blastering. I mean, that somebody's going to wash his mouth out with some soap.
I'll do it.
I mean, he is just
I'm up for the challenge.
He is bad. Ooh, I'm telling you, and his tweets is bad. But anyway, but he was saying, oh, but who's going to pick the food? Who's going to do this? Who's going to wash the dishes? Who's going to clean up after? So he's going on and on and on. I mean, talk about a prideful even tweet. Like, I am wealthy man, and all you little peons, you have to serve me. Yeah, all you have to serve me. But the media goes right along with it. And if you heard the questions last night, they were all on these, and they said like 3 or 4 different people said the same kind of question in a different way, and President Trump answered it very calmly. I mean, I was very proud of him. I mean, he's very calm last night, and he said exactly what he said. It's for green card holders only, but yet the governors and all the politicians want everybody, you, me, to stay at home. Don't leave your house. But let's open the borders and let everybody else come in. No problem. If they have coronavirus, whatever, it doesn't matter, because we are compassionate people.
Let's let all the criminals out of jail.
Yeah,
too.
well, that's another.
We want to let all the criminals out.
All right, but back to you, Mark.
That's good. I appreciate it, brother. All right, wind everything up. Really want to thank everybody for joining me, and I have decided that I want to go through the whole Constitution and discuss point by point everything. So I am closing the compass of kraM as of the show, and from now on, every Wednesday morning, this show will be about the Constitution as we go through article by article, section by section, and amendment by amendment, everything that's on there. And I'm inviting the three of you to join me every week. And I'm going to put out the word for anybody else that wants to join us in here. And however long it takes is however long it takes. The new show will be called The Constitution. And I've got a couple other things. The Compass of kraM will go on. I'm thinking about taking it to evenings. There's Wednesday evenings I thought would be real good. There's a couple of shows on there that I think are going by the wayside, and so I will probably take over there. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, but I think that's the way I'm going to go with this. No, I am going to go with this. We're going to go ahead and go with the Constitution for until it's over with. And also, real quickly, I want to show you, if you have not seen the other. Let's see, it's running quite slow, I think, here. Is if you haven't seen the other ones we've done on the Constitution, you can go to the Messianic Lamb Radio, click on more, go to video library, and scroll down to Mark David Smith and the Constitution. You click on that right there, and it will take you to this page, which has part 1, 2, and 3 on there. This show here will be up by later this afternoon. So if you want to hear it again or want to let somebody know where to go to watch this or show them, or they can watch all of them, that'll be where it's going to be. And so I think that kind of covers it. One quick little point I want to let everybody know is that YouTube uploading is just virtually impossible right now. We can do live shows without a problem, even though there's a lot of lag. I've noticed a lot of lag in this show and other shows that I'm on, and because of the high volume on YouTube during the quarantine. But I can't post any segments. I've been trying for 4 days now to post even 9-minute segments, and they're not. They'll go to 40%, and then for hours they just sit there. So any part of the Lamb Network website that has segments on it, the reason that you're not finding any is because of that. There are notices all over the website explaining that this is what's going on. So I'm still posting the entire show with just a with a disclaimer that there's the timestamp and you can go to a specific part of that show. So anything else going on with anybody? James and Abigail, they are on, I think the last count was about 139 of the 30 shows that are on the Lamb Network. I think they're on most of them. We're thinking about changing this to the O'Hare Network, but people will probably think they need to go to the Chicago airport or something. But anyway.
We'd like to round it off to 140.
140. Yeah, you're on this one now. So
yeah. So, and we will be mounted on our bicamels tonight. So
your bicamerals, yeah.
Are those bicamels?
No, now they're bicameral.
That's what my aunt wanted me to do when I was, she smoked camels, so she wanted me to buy camels. But that's another story.
Well, if you're two house, you're a bicameral. Then Maybe it's a 2 camel as a bicam, or no, never mind.
Those are not bipolar.
Yeah, just don't be bipolar. Don't do that. I'll pray for you. Sherry,
could be bipolar O'Hare.
no, we're not going there at all.
All
Sherry,
right.
thank you for joining us. You are welcome on all these shows from now on. Same thing with you guys, James and Abigail.
Thank you for doing this. You need to put that on YouTube, the study of the Constitution or something, so many other people will come in.
Right. I hope, we've had a good turnout today, so I'm hoping we can build it up even more by going through this. This has been really good. It's probably going to take us close to 6, maybe 7 years to go through this, by the fact that we've only got through Article 1, Section 2 today, or to that, Section 1 today. But
one thing for sure, if we know the Constitution, they will not be able to snooker us.
That's right. You got it. I want to remind everybody, like down at the bottom down there, not Sherry, but down under Sherry, is the website that I'm using to do. There you go. Thank you. The study is annenbergclassroom.org/Constitution. So there you go, somewhere in there. By the way, we can keep our social distancing, but still, be there. We go. I'm gonna stick my finger in Abigail's ear. It looks like.
Where are you?
Anyway, this is what you this is what you call Lamb Network social distancing. All right. Hey, I love you guys with a passion. You guys are the best. That's all there is to it.
You too.
We love you, Mary, love Adina. We just are a love bug group. Let's give it a love hug.
There you go. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Enough of that. All right. Put the word out, if you will, and we'll catch you all next time. We really need to go. Susan's here.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.